they want control. And they want cashless society. So if we were going to have an alternative to Federal Reserve notes, which they can control, then you're on the margin on what you're doing, because even for 40 years, when Roosevelt denied the right of Americans to own gold, we weren't allowed to own gold. So governments are capable of doing this. Anything they can do to protect the power of the state, the power of the banking system, the people who control the money.
This is Dan Dix here, reporting for Press for Truth. Today is Tuesday, May the 29th, 2018, and we got a great show lined up for you today, folks, so let's just jump right into it. Joining us on the line today is the one and only Dr. Ron Paul of the Liberty Report. RonPaulLibertyReport.com is the website. Sir, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. Now,
Good to be with you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a while. I saw you recently at the Anarchapulco conference. There was a great talk you gave there, by the way. And I'm curious today about something you've been talking about for quite some time, something we've been talking about here at Press for Truth for a while as well. And that's the inevitable dollar crash, and not just the fact that this is a matter of if, but it's a matter of when. So I want to get some of your views on how people can prepare for this and protect themselves from it. But before we get into that, I'm curious if you see Donald Trump as maybe being set up to take the fall for a dollar crash, or could he possibly be working in cahoots with the deep state to ensure that it happens?
I'm not sure either one fits the bill completely, because I think it's going to happen, and it'll probably happen on his watch, especially if he gets a second term, because it's coming. But the problems that we're having to face have been developing for a long time. I mean, I'm writing something now on this very issue, and it really started with the inception of the Federal Reserve, what happened in 1944, what happened in 1971. The fiat standard and all the debt that has accumulated, and the inability for governments, especially our Federal Reserve, to allow corrections to occur to get rid of some of these problems, eliminate the debt and the malinvestment. So it will come. I don't think anybody sets them up. I think the system has set them up. I think it could occur no matter which president is in power. They're not going to do it. He can't take credit either for the the economy now, which on the surface seems to be doing better. I guess in one way he could, because he's been a good cheerleader and fooled the people a little bit. But basically, if you have an economy that improves with the president, he can't take the credit, and he shouldn't be blamed for the whole mess. But overall, it's the policies that count. So if you have something that's ready to crash, and then you have a president and a Congress that does all the wrong things, then you're going to make it worse. That certainly is what happened in the Depression time in the 30s. It certainly happened in 2009, when all they did was use QE to build the bubble bigger and bigger. And of course, that's the crisis that we're facing now. And even as we speak, there looks like there's some problems arising in Europe, with great weakness in Italy, and gold going up and the stock market going down. But it's still sort of under control. But eventually it'll lose control. But for me to say, well, Trump joined the neocons and he did that and that, he so far, can't be blamed for this. But in a way, even if you did the right things, if I were in office and I vetoed everything, and cut spending, the immediate reaction would be negative. It'd be like taking somebody off drugs as a drug addict, and the reaction isn't good. So we're really in a mess, and that's also the reason they're going to inflate, and the final crisis will be the rejection of the dollar, and we're not yet there.
Well, do you see the Federal Reserve as ending the Fed as still a viable option? And if so, how could Trump go about doing something like that, or anyone for that matter, when it comes to ending the Federal Reserve?
Well, it couldn't, and I've even said, if I were there and I could take the key and throw it away and end the Fed, it wouldn't be the smartest thing to do. But what has to be done, and that's what I work on now, and all of us do in these liberty movements, is try to change people's mind on what the role of government ought to be, because that's the only thing that really counts, is how much freedom do we have and how much appetite do the people have for government? Do they support the wars? Do they support the welfare state? Do they support fiat money? Because as long as they do that, if you just sort of say, okay, we're going to quit printing money, and you don't have anything to replace it with, and they don't understand what liberty is all about, and they don't understand why deficits do matter, it'll probably cause a civil war. So it's very, very serious, and I think we've made a lot of progress, with people understanding the marketplace. For instance, when I went to Congress in '75, nobody knew anything about the Federal Reserve, nor did they care. Now they do care, and the fact that I was able to get a bill passed by all the Republicans and a lot of Democrats voting to audit the Fed means that they're thinking about it. We still have a long way to go, and even a person like Trump, he had to give token support to it, during the campaign. Yeah, I'd support the audit of the Fed, but that's not going to happen. That meant our group that didn't like the Fed had enough influence that he had to say that. So, but I think the more the merrier. The more we teach people and let them know that during the next crunch, that they have to be very skeptical of what the Fed does, because they do know what the Fed did on the last one. They bailed out the rich, and the poor didn't do so well.
Well, another aspect of this that I think a lot of people are maybe not so well aware of or can really see in the foreseeable future is this concept of an eventual cashless society. Have you looked into that much, and what are your views on that? Do you see that coming to fruition anytime soon?
They're going to try, and they're trying it in Europe, and they would like to do it. Statists would always want that. They don't want any independence. They started with the fact that you weren't allowed to have big bills. They used to have $1,000 bill and $500 bills, and they'll probably get rid of the $100 bill, and they make it a very convenient to use credit cards and teach people not to use cash. So, but I think that's an attack on individual freedom. There's still a lot of people in this country, into the millions, that don't have checking accounts. So they still use cash. But a cashless society is very, very dangerous. So even if you try to patch up what we have, even if we have a cryptocurrency that works, or even if we had people using gold and silver coins, it would still be very difficult to contest with the government, because they want control. And they want cashless society. So if we were going to have an alternative to Federal Reserve notes, which they can control, then you're on the margin on what you're doing, because even for 40 years, when Roosevelt denied the right of Americans to own gold, we weren't allowed to own gold. So governments are capable of doing this. Anything they can do to protect the power of the state, the power of the banking system, the people who control the money. And yet the bubble and the distortions are so great right now that who knows what will happen to it. Sometimes people wonder, well, why is the dollar doing pretty well right now? Today, there's a lot of currencies that are really weak, and the dollar has gone up. And that means that still have a strong currency compared to others. But it's what you have to watch for is the purchasing power of the dollar. And also eventually, certainly through the 70s and 80s, the dollar did get a lot weaker. In the 60s, the dollar was weaker. So purchasing power is a big thing. The dollar is very weak when it comes to stability and purchasing power and acting as a currency, because interest rates are artificial and it generates debt. It's the philosophy of economics, this whole idea that people are Keynesians. They believe deficits don't matter. That's what they've been taught, and the members of Congress believe that deficits are okay and deficits equal wealth. And of course, the people who want power, whether you're there on the left or the right, they understand this. So the coalition is terrible. There's bipartisanship that has hurt us so much, because they support the Fed, they support the war, they support the welfare system, they support the deficits, they support the Patriot Act and SA, and all these things. But this battle has to be for the hearts and minds of individuals who would like to live in a free country, because this is where the real challenge is going to be. Because even if everything came down on our heads and took away all our wealth, if we had our liberties, we'd all get back on our feet again. restore that wealth rather quickly. But right now, there's a big battle going on because they will not want to give up this power very easily. And if they just do it in a token way, we can expect a lot of conflict. There is a conflict building right now. The cultural Marxists and the rich are getting richer, and I recognize that. But that's part of the crony capitalism. But the dissension between the wealthy and the very poor allows people like Bernie Sanders to get an audience, and they literally say what we need now is socialism, this sort of thing. That's the big battle is. It is culture. It's the Wall Streeters and the very wealthy that are wiping out the middle class, and they're becoming poorer. So to me, though, I narrow it down to if we had our liberties, things would be okay.
Yeah, so and I absolutely agree, and I know a lot of people in the liberty movement, if you will, feel the same, and they're trying to find ways to protect themselves as a hedge. You mentioned cryptocurrencies, so I'm curious if you see that as a decent way to protect oneself from what's coming down the pipe here, or is it possible that some of them could be somewhat of a Trojan horse to fast track the one world digital currency?
Yeah, well, I'm open to the technology, and I'm not privy to all the technology and how it works, but I don't think that it's going to be real easy to see the cryptocurrency as a currency in itself. It's going to be very, very useful. I think you can transfer funds and transfer wealth and do it that way. But the state is always going to be hounding us. I thought it was wonderful about the internet, and the libertarians were the very first ones to use the internet and communications and organization. Yet it turns out that the government was behind all that. And here we have YouTube and Google. They're just an arm of the government to take away our liberties and spy on us. So I think blockchain technology, as wonderful it is, and it's going to serve a good purpose, I think that the government's already been too much involved, and I think that is the dilemma. That's where I go back to give us our freedom and get the government out of the way, and we will use it. But just to say that everybody will be okay if everybody had at least a couple bitcoins, and they won't be able to take it from us. I don't think it is that simple. I think that tangible assets are still going to be very, very important. And what happens it takes centuries, thousands of years to evolve away from pure bartering to the point where we have substitutes and we get along and sophisticated financial transactions. But eventually, though, people will, when it breaks down, they always go back to bartering. In times of war and crises, that they want to see something and touch something. So I don't know how it'll pan out with the cryptocurrencies, but my argument has always been competition. Let the people decide. They can sort it out. Don't let the government make the decision. And that was Hayek's argument. Denationalization of currencies, and if people want to use gold, fine. If they believe that they can get a cryptocurrency and they feel secure with it, fine and dandy. But whether it's gold or crypto, I mean, they took the gold from us, and they control our lives in every other way. So it's really the understanding of how are we going to restrain the government from invading our privacy and invading our lives. That to me is the bottom line.
Yeah, and it does seem that gold and silver, being those tangible assets, are a more sound kind of hedge against this. So on that note, where do you see the future of the gold and silver markets today? And is there a great deal of manipulation involved there? And is that still a good way to protect oneself?
Well, I think it is, but I think people ought to hold it themselves. And that's why I fight for liberty, because it'll be difficult if we have total chaos and I become a criminal if I spend my coins. That's a sad situation. But I think it is. It's tangible and usable. Let's hope they don't make it illegal. But that will be the problem. And 1971 was a big event for me when they totally went bankrupt on the currency. We weren't allowed to own the gold, and we pay foreigners gold for their dollars. And that opened up the doors. Look at all the charts from 71 on. And it's a disaster when it comes to deficits and all the problems that we've had. So that is a big event, but currencies and hard money is very, very important. And the reason why gold and silver is important, if you can find reputable people who are in charge, whether it's private or government, if you restrain the illicit growth of money, you restrain government, because the government only gets bigger now because they've been able to print the money. And we have been able to do more than any other country in the history of the world because we have a worldwide fiat currency. So we finance the whole world, and everybody complains. Not everybody, people complain. Oh, well, they're cheating on us on our trade balances and we're buying more stuff from them. Yeah, but we give them paper money and we buy all their stuff and then they buy up our debt. So, but that's going to come to an end. People are going to reject it. And that's why we have countries like China and Russia and others buying gold. And I'm sure they're looking very carefully at the cryptocurrencies as well.
All right. Final question. How small do you think government should be reduced to? Because when I saw your speech at Anarchapulco, I was thrilled to hear you use the I believe you said the word zilch is what it should be reduced to, which almost seems that you're kind of more anarchist leaning these days. But I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but how small should government eventually be reduced to?
Well, we could debate that a little bit, but we should start with trying to follow the law, which is the Constitution, and that's pretty darn limited. The whole Constitution is written to limit the size and scope of the federal government, and that is what we should do. But so some people get frightened about this. No government, no rules. No, actually, in a libertarian society, you still have government. You have self-government, you have voluntary government, you have voluntarism, you have families, communities, and groups get together, and they provide their own defense and provide for their own services. But if the tradition of having an official government, which has been around, for quite a few years, we have to be realistic. The odds of getting rid of that are pretty slim. But quite frankly, I don't think we'd have a whole lot of trouble taking care of our needs if we didn't have a federal government right now. But if we did, we should have had the federal government that we originally had before they had the Constitution. It should be to maybe provide for national defense and have a sound currency and free trade among the states. That is very, very limited. So if you want a number, without trying to have this utopian of zero government, and it's all going to be individuals, we could say that why don't we start with getting rid of about 80% of the federal government as a starter, because we would get rid of the welfare state, we'd get rid of warfareism, and the whole world would be better off, and certainly the people in this country would be better off. We'd be maybe like a giant Hong Kong. We would be into dealing with free markets and sound currencies and commercials things, and that would be such a powerful thing, and let the people take care of themselves. But it's a big job for people to go to that extent, because they just can't understand how it would happen and how it would work. But I think we should at least put it out there so people will think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we will never know unless we give it a try. It's never really been done before, and I would have to agree. At least 80% is a great place to start. And then who knows where it could go from there. So once again, sir, thank you so much for talking to us. I look forward to seeing you. I believe you're going to be at next year's Anarchapulco in Acapulco 2019. Right. So I will see you there. Thanks again. We'll have your links located in the description below.
Very good. Thank you.